Hi, I want to spend a few minutes framing our discussion board on vulnerability. If you haven't listened to Martha Nussbaum's interview or to the podcast with Brené Brown, I would suggest that you do that. Um, it will help you frame this conversation and also provide you with good opportunity for reflection and some clear examples about what we're trying to discuss here. So you might be wondering what vulnerability has to do with leadership. And I actually think it's a key element of leadership that it's often really hard to get in touch with. On week one, we talked about being in the world from Heidegger's perspective. And what that means is being in the world in a way that we're not separate from it. We're not separate from what we deeply care about, but we're part of it, right? Is what I call to be with the change that we want to see in the world. And week by week, we've looked at different perspectives of that being in the world in a way that puts our whole selves in it. And so you might have noticed in some of your sharing that when you are talking and when you're communicating about something that you deeply care about, it puts you in a particular vulnerable place. And the more that you care about something, the more vulnerable you become. You might have noticed that as you were sharing your own personal leadership stories, right? As you were selecting the pieces of music or art to share, it becomes really personal. And so our reading this week from the Leadership Challenge will talk about, uh, to model the way as a key practice of leadership. And when you're modeling the way, you have to take a deep dive into yourself, into who you are, right? As the authors talk about, what are your values? How do you create credibility? How do you set an example? And so as you dig in, trying to be as authentic as possible, and be in the world in this way that puts your full self in the change you want to see. It's a way of opening your heart. It's a way of living heartfully. It's a way of living fully. It's a way of leading effectively. And so a teacher once told me that when you put uh, protection around your heart for uh, for the pain, for the suffering, meaning not wanting to feel pain, it protects your heart both from the good and from the bad. There's no way of having this shelter that knows how to filter the good to let it in and the bad to keep it out. So what happens is that it disconnects us from the world. It disconnects us from each other. When we create these shields um, that protects us from pain, it creates internal pain as well. So the same thing that we're trying to protect ourselves from, it's creating another type of pain, a pain of isolation. And so the invitation through vulnerability is to open our hearts, to the good and to the bad, and to I think Josh said in his posting last week, the tragedy in the triumph and the triumph in the tragedy. It's so important as part of being fully in the world. So the intention of this discussion board is to provide an environment where you can be vulnerable, where you can share a little bit more about um, what what supports you to be vulnerable, what limits you from being vulnerable, how, what are you vulnerable about? What do you care deeply about that it feels so incredibly risky. So in the video from Martin Nussbaum, you saw that the Greek philosophers studied the good life, and they studied them through the tragedies, to the Greek tragedies, and um, and what they saw is that in order to for us to have a good life as human beings, we have to open up, we have to welcome both the joy and the suffering in our lives. And in order to be able to do that, we have to increase our capacity to be vulnerable, to increase our capacity to hold our own pain as we are with our communities, as we are with ourselves, as we are with our friends, as we are with our families, right? That we can hold that in a way that brings our authentic selves out, that it doesn't keep us separate, but it keeps us connected. Because only in that connection will we be able to create this change we want to see in the world. We will be able to create the transformational leadership that we want to have. So I want to invite you to be very mindful about this discussion board and to treat each other with love and with respect, because it's important that we create safety in this container, um, to be able to share a little bit about what makes us vulnerable. So I'm looking forward to reading your posts and comments in this discussion board. I hope that it's already making some connections for you about the importance of going deep into our vulnerability. And as Brené Brown says, vulnerability is where our creativity, our passion, our joy, our love, our ability to transform lives. So I wish you not just this week, but a life of um, vulnerability. So I'll see you in the board. Take care. Bye.